Welcome back to the most unprofessional sports channel on YouTube. Welcome back to Swivel Chair Sports. I'm your host, Zach Circle Barkburnell, here with the host today, Aaron. Go and say hi, Aaron.
Hi, if you like our content, be sure to like and subscribe, and leave a comment, and let us know what you think.
But other than that, let's go ahead and get into it. We'll be continuing a series where we're grading all NFL teams' offseason transactions, where we compare each team's key departures with their key acquisitions and giving them a grade from A to F based on what we think or how we think they did this offseason. In this video, we'll be going over the AFC West. In the last video, we did the NFC West. So if you haven't caught that, make sure to go check that out right after this one. But without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started with the two-time Super Bowl defending champion Kansas City Chiefs this offseason, losing a couple notable names like Nick Allegretti, backup lineman who stepped up big in the AFC Championship game and Super Bowl, filling in for Joe Thuney, helping the Chiefs win their second straight title. Also losing Willie Gay to the New Orleans Saints. Great third linebacker for the Chiefs this past year, alongside Nick Bolton and Drew Tranquill. And then most notably, probably, L'Jarius Sneed getting traded to the Tennessee Titans this offseason. Obviously, he was a big part of a very lethal Chiefs defense. Should have been an All-Pro, to be honest, but just missed out on that accolade. Weren't able to come to a contract agreement, so he got shipped off to Tennessee. As far as key acquisitions the Chiefs made this offseason, didn't really bring in a whole lot in free agency, mainly a whole lot of re-signings in the front seven, most notably Chris Jones, obviously being the highest paid defensive tackle in NFL history now. But Chiefs did acquire Marquise Hollywood Brown in free agency this offseason. The wide receiver signed a one-year deal with the Chiefs, so that probably being the most notable name that the Chiefs brought in through free agency. And then we go to the draft, bringing in Xavier Worthy, a first-round pick, fastest man alive, running the fastest 40 time in NFL history this past combine. And then along with that, they also brought in a couple of depth pieces like tight end Jared Wiley out of TCU, and then hopeful developmental tackle in Kingsley Suamaitai out of BYU. So, Aaron, what are your thoughts on the Chiefs offseason?
They were pretty hampered by cap space, obviously, especially with the Chris Jones deal, and it sucks that we had to let Sneed walk. But we kind of brought back all the people that we'd been hoping to bring back, especially on that D line with Derek Nottie, Mike Pennell, and Mike Dana, and even Tershawn Wharton. So it was a lot of re-signing guys that had already been on the team and kind of know how things are done. And then Marquise Brown, that's a big pickup. Released MVS, I believe, right?
Yeah, we let him go before his last year.
I think we were all kind of hoping in the draft we'd go receivers so that we could really improve on what was our weakest link last year, was our receiving core. Then going Xavier Worthy, who I said was my guy that I wanted us to get directly out of the combine, just because Tyreek Hill kind of vibes, but more likely that he would be the only first round quality receiver left at that point, with us drafting 32. But then surprisingly we moved up and took him with some other receivers on the board, so I like that. We liked him that much to move up and trade with Buffalo. I like the Jaden Hicks pickup, kind of shoring up that safety room, hoping he can learn from Justin Reed, that hopefully he can develop. And then I like the Jared Wiley pick as well, kind of a Kelsey-esque real receiving tight end, and hopefully he can improve on his blocking as well.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely the cap space was a big reason the Chiefs weren't able to do more in free agency, obviously. And most Chiefs fans, realistic Chiefs fans, knew that going in, that best case scenario, we're going to bring most of the players back that we won a Super Bowl with already, and that's what happened. So With that being said, as far as expectations go, I think they did about as good as you could expect. I mean, we knew we'd lose either Chris Jones or L'Jarius Sneed. In my opinion, we picked the right guy. Um, so it's hard because when you lose a guy of Sneed's caliber to give him a super high grade. So I think I'm going to settle with a B. Well above average, but could have been a little bit better. Obviously, if they could find some way to keep Sneed, it may have been enough to push it into A territory for me. But with that loss, I think it brings them down a little bit. So I went with B.
I think when you look at the biggest weaknesses we had and the steps we took to improve them, I think that significantly raises the grade. Losing Sneed does hurt, but I do think that our D coordinators were kind of high on some of the guys that we had last year that didn't play a whole lot or maybe got hurt early in the season. So I think like B plus, A minus would probably be the range I'd go with.
Yeah.
I'll go B plus because there weren't any real like big swings. I think Marquise Brown, that's a solid pickup, young guy. And then Xavier Worthy, obviously, I'm really excited for that.
Yeah, you hope that those two can bring some stability to a wide receiver room that's been lacking that since Tyreek Hill got traded. So, moving on to the Los Angeles Chargers. Chargers last year definitely fell short of expectations, as they kind of have in the Justin Herbert era to a degree. A lot of that you could blame on probably coaching. Brandon Staley not the best track record as a head coach so far.
Era, more like it.
Yeah, it was probably more an issue with the Brandon Staley era than the Justin Herbert era, and that'll be proven this year with Jim Harbaugh hopefully coming in and turning that ship around. The Chargers did lose some significant pieces, specifically on the offensive side, parting ways with running back Austin Eckler, and then wide receivers Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. We assumed that they were going to lose one of those two receivers, and then maybe one of the edge rushers as well, but they decided to keep both Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa over either of these receivers, trading obviously Keenan Allen over to the Bears and then cutting Mike Williams, who ended up signing with the Jets. As far as the defensive side of the ball goes, they did lose linebacker Kenneth Murray to the Titans, who I don't think he lived up to the expectations they had when they drafted him, so maybe not considered too huge of a loss there. And then as far as additions go, brought in tight end Hayden Hurst, who's probably well past his prime at this point, to hopefully help replace the Gerald Everett production. Brought in running back Gus Edwards to hopefully replace the Austin Eckler production. He had some success up there in Baltimore, of course. Other tight end Will Dissly to hopefully also shore up that tight end room. But yeah, not a whole lot of notable names in free agency. As far as the draft goes, they kind of went safe and boring, taking Joe Alt at 5, which I do think was the right decision, but obviously kind of like the boring route when you could have went Malik Neighbors or even Roma Dunze there. They did go receiver later on, though, in the second round, taking Ladd McConkey out of Georgia, which I think was a good decision. He could very well be the number one guy this next season now that Keenan Allen and Mike Williams are both gone. So a lot of turnover, to say the least. Also, I think one guy that they did draft who could end up being a little bit of a sleeper pick was the 7th round wide receiver Brendan Rice, Jerry Rice's son, obviously, out of the University of Southern California. He could develop into something pretty nice over there in LA with Justin Herbert throwing to him. Obviously, he's got Hall of Fame blood coursing through his veins. So I think the sky's the limit for his potential. What are your thoughts on the Chargers offseason?
I mean, they did their best to kind of repair that receiver room. Brought in DJ Chark, drafted Ladd McConkey. It'll be interesting to see which one of them ends up being number one, or if either of them can be like a real number one receiver, or if they need to look to get one before the trade deadline or free agency or draft next year. Also brought in J.K. Dobbins, so 2 ex-Baltimore running backs. Yeah. That'll be, I think, a good tandem. Yeah. J.K. Dobbins, some injury history, but hopefully he's all squared away and kind of turns his career around there and LA. As far as the draft goes, Joe Walt, definitely the right pick. You 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 cannot pass up what everybody is speculating to be a generational talent, especially at left tackle. So they did the smart thing with Jim Harbaugh there in his first year, and then the Brendan Rice pick, solid pick for where they got him at. But other than that, I think they just did their best with repairing that receiver room for the most part, and facing Austin Eckler.
Yeah, this was clearly the first steps in a rebuilding process, trying to get Harbaugh's guys in there, the ones that he wants. It is interesting bringing both running backs over from one Harbaugh system to another Harbaugh system, so that'll be kind of fun. Maybe have a couple stories to tell each other when they eventually get to training camp. But yeah, because they lost so much key talent, specifically in the wide receiver room, they did their best to replace it, like you said. I do think that brings their grade down some. We knew that they'd run into this problem eventually because their cap was just bloated to all hell. They were just paying way too many guys, way too much money. So this was inevitable. This is the first step in trying to get this roster right under the Harbaugh administration. So, with that being said, I can't put it too high because I'm not super impressed, but with what they were given, they did the best they can. So, I will give them a C, really close to a C minus, but I'll give them a C.
I was thinking more B minus, if I'm being honest, because I mean, Lad McConkey, good pick. DJ Chark, that's a solid pickup, especially with the two receivers that they had. As talented as they were, struggling with injuries and never really seeming to be on the same field. Picking up a guy who's gonna help keep Herbert upright and healthy, I think that's a crucial pick. Replacing Austin Eckler, who wanted a lot of money, with two relatively cheap running backs.
Yeah,
I think they did a really good job this offseason.
Yeah, I just see a lot of talent walking out the door and a lot of unknowns coming in the door, I guess, is my concern there. But I think you could argue B in the B minus B range for sure, because especially if you're high on McConkey, and the DJ Chark edition could end up being significant. But yeah, I'm just a lot of unknowns for me personally, I guess. All right, moving on to the Denver Broncos. Obviously, they had a little bit of a resurgence in the second half of the season last year after starting off really, really slow. Had 70 points dropped on their head by the Miami Dolphins early on in the year, and then ended up beating the Chiefs later on in the year. So, season full of ups and downs, the Russell Wilson experience, you may call it. Speaking of Russell Wilson, he was probably the most notable name to leave the Broncos this offseason. Along with him, Jerry Jeudy got traded to the Cleveland Browns, so lost Josie Jewell, linebacker, to the Panthers, and then I believe they cut Justin Simmons, safety, this offseason. So a little bit of turnover at some key positions for the Broncos, but some moves that they probably needed to make. Jerry Jeudy wasn't exactly living up to expectations. Russell Wilson was definitely not living up to expectations. And then Justin Simmons was just maybe a little bit too old to keep paying him the money that they were. As far as additions go, they brought in Josh Reynolds. And then outside of that, not a ton of free agency acquisitions of note. But then obviously in the draft, drafting Bo Nix 12th overall to hopefully be their franchise quarterback of the future, and then taking his number one receiving target at Oregon, Troy Franklin, later on in the 4th round, which I think was just a steal at that spot. And then another potential steal, 5th round cornerback Chris Abrams-Drain out of Missouri. I think that's really good value right there. Along with, I've seen some clips of this Audric Estime kid out of Notre Dame. That dude is freaking jacked. That guy is just a giant ball of meat ready to run down your throat. All things considered, the Broncos did okay, I think. Lost some players that they needed to get rid of and brought in some talent to replace those players that I think could really pan out. So, what are your thoughts?
I mean, you talk about a team that was really bound by cap space. That cap hit from Russell Wilson did them no favors. So they couldn't really do a whole lot in free agency, coupled with some of the players that they had to let go to kind of make things work. Yeah, free agency obviously let down if you're a Broncos fan. Couldn't really make a whole lot of moves there. But then in the draft, you get, like you said, who you hope is your savior in Bo Nix and Troy Franklin. And then Chris Abrams drain. They just love taking Missouri players and ruining them. Bastards. Hopefully he's the exception to the rule and has success against everyone but the Chiefs.
Yeah.
I'm kind of surprised Audric Estime, with how good he was at Notre Dame, wasn't one of the first running backs taken off the list. I am terrified that he's going to run all over us. Yeah, this is full rebuild for the Broncos.
Yeah, they're a step ahead of the Chargers, though, in my opinion, as far as rebuild goes. Maybe not at the quarterback position. Obviously, you got Justin Herbert over in LA. That you don't know if Bo Nix is nearly going to be that good. Although 2 Oregon quarterbacks, that's kind of cute. But yeah, I think as far as the defense goes, they got a better defense than the Chargers, in my opinion. So I have the Broncos slightly higher than the Chargers. And for the offseason, I think I'm going to give them a B-, because I really like the pairing of Bo Nix and Troy Franklin in the draft. I did not think they were going to be able to take Franklin with no second-round pick. I assumed he would definitely go in the second round, but fell to the fourth. Abrams Drain, I thought was going to be a top 3 round pick. Him going in the 5th, I thought was great value. And then, like you said, Audric Estime, I thought was going to go earlier. Dude's freaking jacked. He's huge. He's going to run all over the league. So, yeah, I really like what the Broncos did this offseason. I almost want to give them a B, but I'll settle with a B-.
As much as it pains me to say, I really like their draft.
Yeah.
But their free agency letdown it takes it down like a full letter grade for me. And that's not necessarily their fault. They had to make the moves that they made. But they're there in like that C+ range for me.
Okay, so yeah, just slightly below me. And you said, as far as free agency goes, I don't think they did as bad as they could have, because, like I said, they didn't really lose anybody of significance outside of, I mean, if you want to say Russell Wilson has significance on that Broncos team, then by all means. But Justin Simmons, I guess, was probably the most significant player they lost this offseason. So I'm really grading it kind of like they didn't lose a whole lot, and they gained a lot of talent that I feel really, really excited about for them. So moving on to our last team of the video, we got the Las Vegas Raiders, who've kind of been the doormat of the AFC West to a degree the last decade or so. Haven't been able to find that consistency, I guess. They haven't been able to find the consistency. Derek Carr was their franchise guy for quite some time, and he was hampered by injuries, had a bunch of ups and downs. So now they're on the lookout for a new franchise quarterback. It was not Jimmy Garoppolo. Their franchise quarterback was not Jimmy Garoppolo, as they part ways with him this offseason after moving him to the bench throughout the year. Other notable names that they lost: Josh Jacobs, running back, went up to Green Bay to play for the Packers. One of the best running backs in the league during his time in Las Vegas, so could be interesting to see what the Raiders are like without that threat in the backfield. The other notable name would be Hunter Renfrow, wide receiver, who's kind of been a staple of the Raiders offense for a little while now. A really good rack guy, real reliable hands out there. So to part ways with him was kind of surprising to me, but I guess they're just wanting to move on and start a new era there in the city of sin. As far as additions go, biggest addition probably by far is defensive tackle Christian Wilkins coming to town to pair with Max Crosby up front. Just an absolute beast of a combo right there. Also signed Gardner Minshew to take over the quarterback role for the Raiders this next season. Running back Alexander Madison to hopefully replace some of the production that Josh Jacobs provided for them out of the backfield. And then outside of that, I mean, just a bunch of depth pieces. But move on to the draft. And the Raiders, in my opinion, I think earlier, maybe last month, we did a video on the biggest winners and losers of the NFL draft, and I had the Raiders as my biggest loser because I was not impressed by their draft. I think they kind of should have probably traded out of 13 instead of taking Brock Bowers. They already had Michael Mayer, however you pronounce his name, at tight end, so I think that was kind of a redundancy there. I did like their second round pick in Jackson Powers-Johnson to help shore up that offensive line. But after that, I just wasn't really impressed by what they did in the draft. So not a huge fan of the Raiders offseason. What are your thoughts?
I think I'm a little higher on their offseason than you are. I like the Michael Gallup and Jalen Guyton pickups for kind of a struggling receiving room other than Devontae Adams. Obviously, we're losing Hunter Renfrow. That hurts, but they're turning over a new leaf, it seems. Already brought up the Christian Wilkins. That's massive pickup for what's already a great D-line with Max Crosby causing hell every game, playing every snap. I don't know how he does it. And then Alexander Madison, he had a productive couple of seasons up there in Minnesota. So I think they're getting maybe not the same, but similar production for a lot cheaper at that running back position. And then in the draft, Brock Bowers, I do kind of agree with you. Just didn't seem like the draft quite fell their way. Probably, obviously, looking to go quarterback for the future to maybe sit a season behind Gardner Minshew and then take that leap the season after. But taking Brock Bowers, I like the pick. I kind of disagree with people who say they should have traded out. You see how hard it is to cover like generational talent tight ends like George Kittle, Travis Kelce, Rob Gronkowski, and if Brock Bowers is as good as people are speculating he could be a real problem in the NFL. Jackson Powers-Johnson, good pickup. Always good to take O-line when you can, but as much as the draft didn't quite fall their way, I think they did a good job.
I mean, I don't know. I think they had other positional needs that they probably needed to address after the Jackson Powers-Johnson pick. Because, like I said, I did like that. But after that, I mean, they took a tackle that was pretty low rated at that point. It was kind of a reach there in the third round in Delmer Glaze. And then after, just kind of went defense after that, which I think was kind of a mistake in a draft class that had a lot of wide receiver talent. They didn't take a single one. So that was a little surprising to me. Yes, they did take Brock Bowers, who is basically a receiver, but I think they could have went other directions in the third or fourth rounds than they did. So wasn't a huge fan of their draft, and then their offseason acquisitions outside of Christian Wilkins and Gardner Minshew to an extent, because I do think he's a really good bridge QB. I was not very impressed with. So I think I'm going to give him a D+, really carried by the Christian Wilkins acquisition, because like I said, I didn't love the redundancy of the Brock Bowers selection. I think they could have gotten some more value if they traded out. But you do have a point that generational tight ends are harder to cover than almost any other position. So
yeah, and kind of for that reason, I'm gonna give them. It really sucks that they couldn't get a quarterback.
Yeah,
it really sucks.
I agree.
I think I have to give them a C+.
Yeah, I
mean, they did all right in free agency, but after that Brock Bowers and Jackson Powers-Johnson pick, I think they definitely could have done a lot better. But I really do love that Brock Bowers pick.
Yeah, and it could end up working really well for them. Brock Bowers and Michael Mayer together on the field could wreak havoc in the middle of the field for linebackers and safeties alike. So it could. I mean, he's going to be good regardless of where he went. So I'm not worried about that. He's going to be a good player. You're right. It sucks they couldn't get a QB because that's clearly what they were going to take at 13. And I think it just kind of came down to best player available whenever no one was there. So it is what it is. But it'll be interesting to see how this division shakes out outside the Chiefs, really, because I think the Chiefs are going to run away with it. But those other three teams will probably be pretty competitive with each other. Maybe one of them can scrape away with a wild card spot. We'll just have to wait and see. But if you feel like any of our opinions were wrong, make sure to let us know down below in the comments. If you feel like any of our opinions are right, make sure to drop us a like right down there below. But unless you got anything else, Aaron, I think that'll do it for this episode of the most unprofessional sports channel on YouTube, Swivel Chair Sports. I've been your host, Zach Circleberg-Burkle, here with the coach today, Aaron. Let's say bye, Aaron.
Bye.
All right, please make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this, and check out our other video that we did on the NFC West Division Offseason Grades. Should be somewhere right around here. But other than that, deuces.